So welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto. And today I have the honor and the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Rob Finch from Cypherglass. I want to welcome you, Rob. I've been a fan for a long time. Huge fan of the fact that you guys contribute a lot to the community in terms of some of the applications that you've built and just a lot of your media in general. And I guess to kick it off, if it's okay, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and maybe talking a little bit about how you found EOS, and kind of the whole thing that ultimately, like whether it was a decision or discussion or what brought you to deciding that you wanted to announce your candidacy for block producer?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rob Finch, as you so greatly introduced me. So I got into crypto first in 2013, sort of dove down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Started looking at, oh, wow, I don't have to trust a bank. I don't have to trust somebody to hold my money for me. And that really resonated with me and led to me doing, thousands of hours of hours of research into it. From that point, a couple years later, found Ethereum, dove down that rabbit hole as well, and saw, the added utility beyond just a store of value or a unit of account where, on Bitcoin, you're really just transferring coins back and forth. On Ethereum, you could sort of do more with the advent of smart contracts and then the dApps that you could build on top of it. And then I guess maybe 2 years after I discovered Ethereum, I saw the initial consensus, 2017, I think it was, announcement from Dan Larimer and Brendan Bloomer, where they were talking about all the problems that Ethereum had, with scalability and usability and transaction fees. And I sort of run into those problems myself, and then dove down the EOS rabbit hole. But it wasn't until, I think, November 2017 that I decided, hey, I want to run a block producer and try to be a part of this ecosystem. Whereas, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, I was kind of sitting on the sidelines, researching, interacting with the community somewhat. But with EOS, I really wanted to step up and actually be a part of that community. So started, formulating the plans for the block producer and eventually announced it many, many months later, about a month before the mainnet actually launched.
Yeah, and it's been a pretty wild ride ever since. It's funny because I was talking the other day, just, like one day in this space feels like it just moves so fast. So,
yeah.
When we think back, EOS is a little bit over 100 days old. When you think about it, it's crazy. It seems like I've been doing this forever, just interviews even, and I really have not by any stretch of the imagination. I guess we're going to kind of dig into some of the things that that you guys are up to and kind of some of the new developments and some of the contributions that you've made. But I always kind of like to add like a little bit of a human aspect to this as well, because I think people just want to know a little bit about you. When you're not doing all things EOS, and of course it is pretty all-consuming, like what do you do for fun, Rob? What makes you happy?
Yeah, for fun, honestly, it's more digital stuff. So I'm staring at a screen most of the day, interacting with the community for Cypherglass, but then I'm playing video games. I'm a huge World of Warcraft player. So I just did an interview recently with SVK Crypto and talked more about that and how that allowed me to see value in digital items, which I think is why I grabbed onto the Bitcoin concept, so strongly at the beginning. But also, during the winter, like to snowboard, during the summer, like to go out and run, but very much a homebody, very much somebody that does a lot of stuff on a screen all day. So
yeah, I can relate. I've kind of become that way too.
It's crazy. All the stuff that's happening in EOS, there's just so much going on, from, new dApps launching to, new proposals, upgrades to the ecosystem, looking at stuff that might happen in the future and speculating on that, which is always fun. That, it really is, like you said, all consuming. So there's always more time that can be put into it.
And it's scary if you put your laptop down or your computer down for like 3 hours and you come back to it. It feels like absolutely everything has happened.
Yeah, exactly. You missed 2 announcements and a bug fix and a bunch of other stuff all in that period of time.
Sure. When you were starting off as a child, obviously EOS wasn't around, but what were kind of some of your aspirations? Like, was this kind of a straight career path, or was this just something that evolved naturally, or how did it all come together?
It definitely evolved. So I went to art school in 2013 or 2011, dropped out in 2013, shortly after I discovered Bitcoin and had, been through the process of teaching myself how to build websites. So I was always very, tech focused, looking at, how can I automate parts of the websites that I'm building? How can I make things faster? And through that is how I actually discovered Bitcoin on Reddit. There was a design competition for what is now the famous Magic Internet Money ad. But stumbled across that, saw the competition, didn't actually enter it or participate in it, but that's what, hooked me into the Bitcoin subreddit and got me interested. So I've always been very tech focused. And I think, being tech focused, being video game focused, where I put value on digital items, all of that and sort of this natural distrust for authority led me to crypto. And here I am now. And it's so exciting over the last, almost 2 years now. Went full-time on ICO Alert at the beginning of 2017. So coming up on 2 years that I'll actually be full-time in crypto, which is a pretty cool milestone.
It's a beautiful thing when you can kind of align your passions with something that ultimately can make you a career. So
definitely.
I get it. As I kind of mentioned, it's been 100 days since the launch, and 100 days feels like 6 years, at least to me anyway. What are some of the primary differences or some of the primary changes or just things that stand out to you since the launch has actually occurred?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've noticed is that a lot of things that EOS promised are actually working. So, Block 1 came out, they said, hey, this thing is scalable. The initial single-threaded sort of version 1.0 that we're on now can do anywhere between 5 and 10,000 transactions per second. We've seen that basically proven where, the network has only ever needed to produce about 4,000 transactions per second, but it's done it well. It's done it relatively flawlessly. We've seen other issues like, the RAM fee issues where it cost a lot of money at the beginning to create an account. We've seen that come down thanks to some proposals that were implemented that reduce the amount of RAM required, but also add more RAM to the system over time to bring the prices down. So I think what we've really seen over the last 100 days are a lot of these things that were, sort of presented by Block 1, the people behind the EOS software. We've seen a lot of that come to fruition, a lot of that proven. And I think the part that excites me the most is the governance, where, that RAM issue I mentioned, where the actual RAM needed to create an account was reduced. That was a proposal put in place by the block producers. 15 of them came together and voted on it, and it was approved and implemented into the system almost immediately. But if you look at other systems like Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you wanted to implement any kind of code change, you would have to, go through this long, arduous process. It'd be months, maybe even years to get people to agree to a soft fork. And in some cases, you would even need a hard fork and, create an entirely new chain to implement that change. So I think what we're seeing on EOS, the ability to, continually update it, to continually improve it, is something that we haven't seen before, and gets me super, super excited for what might happen in the future.
100%. Let's talk about Cypherglass, the name.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about, because it kind of ties in together. It's two separate questions, but I'm going to throw my at once. Cypherglass, what are some of your core values as a BP? And then, of course, the glass part of Cypherglass. What exactly is glass?
Yeah, so Cypherglass is one word put together, but if you split it apart and you have cipher and glass, that's really where the meaning behind our name comes from. So cipher being code, the blockchain runs on code. It's, we're sort of live by the code. I'm not sure I agree that code is law, but that's sort of where the cipher part comes from. Then glass obviously is our huge focus on transparency. So we believe that, not only ourselves, but all of the other block producers need to be very transparent in this system in order for the governance process to work. So we're seeing some issues with that now where some other BPs may not be as transparent, where, it may be affecting the chain a little bit. So glass, that part of our name is really our core commitment to transparency and being transparent in everything that we do.
For sure. Voter apathy. I think that's kind of become an issue in the sense that people tend to feel that their votes don't matter. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I hear that a lot. There'll be people who have 10, 20, 30, maybe 100 EOS. That's the EOS they have. And to them, that may be a lot, which is, amazing. I mean, 100 EOS, you're still a significant part of the ecosystem. But when they look at these other accounts voting that have 1 million EOS or 10 million EOS or a proxy voting that has millions and millions of EOS, they think, oh, my 100 EOS doesn't count. But the way that block producers are paid on EOS, they're paid by the amount of votes that you actually get. So if you take those 100 votes and you go out and you vote for your favorite block producers, you're directly impacting the amount of money that block producer is making, and thus the amount of money that block producer can reinvest back into the ecosystem. So if you have 100 EOS or even 10 EOS or 1 EOS and you're not voting, that's money that you're leaving on the table that could go into a block producer's pocket and then back into the ecosystem. So, every vote really does count in this system.
It really does. And that's kind of a refreshing perspective that perhaps people really need to hear.
Yeah.
You guys do a ton of stuff for the community. Like, you guys do some really sleek videos. As I mentioned earlier, like, I'm a really big fan of some of the media that you put out because it's just really well produced. It's super informative. And you're one of the block producers that I've kind of had my eyes on since the beginning. In what ways are you kind of working to engage the community and to continue to educate?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, our YouTube channel is our biggest, sort of source of voter education material right now, where we put out mostly, timely news updates. So for example, we're working on a video right now about the new Chintai token leasing platform, putting out some other cool proposals we have for changes to how the voting process might work to, limit collusion and things like that. But if you search Cypherglass on YouTube, you're going to find all that content. But of course, have a really cool Twitter feed as well at Cypherglass BP on Twitter, where a lot of that content comes out. But in addition to the stuff that we've done in the past, like the Ledger hardware wallet bounty that added Ledger support for EOS, we are working on some other cool educational products that should come out in the future to really help people go from zero, where you have no idea what a blockchain is, how it works, how to even get into the space, to then being able to, set up your own wallet on your own, send your first EOS transaction, vote for block producers, and really try to get people that haven't been in the ecosystem at all, freshly joined into the ecosystem so that we can, continue to grow this thing and grow the EOS network.
Yeah, we really do need adoption, and adoption only comes from getting new users, and new users only come from making things simple and easy. So
definitely
cool about it. Let's talk about your roadmap for Cypherglass. Like, what's happening now, what's new, and what's in the distant future?
Yeah, so right now, two of our tech guys, James and Ross, who've done a great job in keeping our infrastructure online, making upgrades and making changes when we need to, are sort of fleshing out the next version of our infrastructure. So right now, we were one of the first block producers to switch to fully dedicated infrastructure that we own in two different data centers in the U.S. One is in Kansas City, Missouri. The other just further north in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So these are dedicated sites where we own the hardware, but we're looking now at upgrading so that we're ready when the next sort of version 2.0 or multi-threading version of EOS comes out. Right now, everything's single-threaded. You need, sort of single core CPUs processing everything. But in the near future, a lot of that's going to change, and storage is also going to be added as a component. So we're working on sort of, fleshing that out, putting out some more proposals to help these voting issues, and also hopefully filling our $50,000 Trezor bounty. The Ledger portion of the bounty was filled. That's out. Ledger support is there for EOS, but we're hoping that some developers are hard at work on the Trezor portion so that we can serve that area of the market as well.
For sure. Let's talk dApps, Rob. What's out there?
Yeah.
What's exciting you? What do you have your eyes on, and what's some of the dApps that maybe in the ecosystem that just kind of pique your interest?
Yeah, so right now I think what's interesting and something we're seeing now is very similar to other platforms. So when Ethereum first launched, and even when Bitcoin launched, way back in the day, it obviously launched in 2008, 2009, but in 2013, when I got involved, there were these little like poker sites and betting applications that you could use and bet Bitcoin on, but they never really gained a lot of steam because of a couple of reasons. You had these big transaction fees you had to pay for every bet you made. And because of the cost of those transaction fees, you were really limited in the size of the bets you could do, the frequency of the bets you could do. But now that EOS is out and transactions are free, block times confirm in half a second. So it's very, very fast. It opens up this wide range of possibilities. So I'm super excited, not just about the gambling games that are launching on EOS, but games in general. So I've been excited about, EOS Bet that came out, a new one that came out recently called Bet Dice, which I think is pretty interesting. And they have some interesting new games coming out in the future. But also things like EOS Nights, where, it's this sort of RPG platformer style game where you buy your knight and power it up and you can sell it to other people. And all of these things are things that really weren't possible on any other platform until now. So as far as dApps go, in one sentence, I'm super excited for all the gaming dApps that are going to come out and be tokenized on EOS.
Sure, and I don't blame you one bit. Being a block producer has got to be pretty tumultuous. It's going to be very up and down. Like one second you're in, the next second you're not. How does that play on you? Does it kind of push you to work harder? Is it frustrating? How does that play out for you? I couldn't imagine what it would be like to. It's essentially like an ongoing election, which is what it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about EOS, I think, is that rather than just having to, on Bitcoin, you go out, you buy a bunch of hardware, you start mining, and then you just kind of sit back and relax and, don't invest anything into the ecosystem if you don't want to. You could just sell your Bitcoin that you mine every month and not even worry about it. But on EOS, we're really forced to continue to invest back into the ecosystem. So right now, pretty much all of our profit, if in some months we haven't had profit, but when we do, pretty much reinvesting all of that back into the ecosystem, whether it be through things like planning the next phase of our infrastructure or working on bounties or whatever the case may be. So it can be tumultuous to be in the top 21 one day and out of the top 21 the next day, but I think it encourages us to work harder and really focus on the long term of the EOS network, which I think will result in a much healthier EOS network over time. Yeah,
and I think that kind of as we discussed, like EOS is so new. A lot of people forget that, and I think everybody expects things to happen overnight. When do you think? Yeah. When do you think EOS adoption is going to come? Like, what do we need to make that happen? And you see that happening.
Yeah, I think we're going to look back on 2018 as kind of the beta year of EOS. Like you said, we're just a little more than 100 days old of the network, and a lot of things are still coming and being put into place. So we have things like we're still on the single-threaded version. We need to move to multi-threaded. We need side chains so that I can run my app on my own side chain and connect it to the mainnet if I want. We need a bunch of these features that aren't really out yet. So I think 2018 will kind of be looked at as that beta year for EOS, where 2019, I think we're going to see a huge amount of adoption. But I do think that adoption is going to come first in the gaming sector. So whether that's a gambling game or it's something more like, let's say, Blizzard Entertainment, who makes World of Warcraft, let's say they come out and they tokenize their game in some way, or somebody else launches an MMO game, that's tokenized. I think gaming in general is something that's going to be huge for EOS. And, seeing that the top 5 games, the top 5 dApps that are running on EOS right now, I think 3 out of 5 of those are games. So I think gaming is something that's going to bring in millions and millions of people into the EOS ecosystem, throughout the rest of this year, but of course into 2019.
I agree, and I hope so. And a lot of the games you're talking about, I'm very interested in. I have yet to dig into EOS Nights, but I also know that that's kind of resource-based, so it's something I've been meaning to. I just can't find the time.
Yeah.
What gets you up every day, Rob? Like, what gets you out of bed and going to work and excited and just keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah. I'm just excited. I mean, taking a long-term view of anything in crypto, I think is a very healthy thing to do, and something that can, continue to get you out of bed, even if you're in a bear market, or if, there's a bug found one day and something's not going right. I think focusing on those long-term goals, like, hey, we want EOS to be the main, dApp platform. We want, millions of users using dApps every day. Focusing on those long-term goals and taking steps to achieve that, whether it's waking up and working on, an education platform, or waking up and, talking with developers who are competing for the Trezor bounty. I think all of those things, and I think the EOS community in particular, just the positivity that's there, and, the whether it's speculation driven or, hype driven, just looking to the future is what really gets me out of bed and gets me excited every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I do enjoy doing these. It's one of the best parts of my day.
Yeah.
What are some of the formative experiences that might have shaped the way that you guys operate as a block producer? Was there anything that stands out?
I think probably just looking at other systems. So if you look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, there are really 3 people, 3 mining pools in charge of each of those that control more than 51% of the, computing power, the hash power on the network. So I think looking at other systems, back in 2013, when I discovered Bitcoin, the scaling debate about, should we increase the block size or should we do something else to allow Bitcoin to process more transactions, that was going on way back then and still was never really resolved today, resulted in the Bitcoin Cash hard fork and some other forks. So I think just looking at how the governance process was really ground to a halt in these other systems, not only drew me to EOS, but also sort of laid the foundation for what Cypherglass would be, which is very much a community-driven approach where, when I was writing in the Bitcoin subreddit so many years ago saying, hey, we should do this, not this, and you feel like nobody's really listening to you since the miners have the power. Our goal at Cypherglass was to really always listen to not just the people that are voting for us, but the EOS community in general, so that we're always doing the things that the token holders want and, creating a better ecosystem that everybody actually wants to be a part of.
Yeah, and speaking of that ecosystem, the good, the bad, and the ugly, like what's good with EOS, what frustrates you, and what needs work, and how can we make some of those improvements?
Yeah, I think the good right now is the scalability and usability. So processing thousands of transactions per second right now, we're seeing these awesome new dApps be launched every day and new dApps in the pipeline that I'm sure we'll see funded by EOSVC in the near future. I think the bad part right now is just figuring out some of these governance issues. So not necessarily a bad thing in the long term, but fixing things like voting collusion or giving people more of an incentive to come out and vote so that there isn't so much voter apathy like you mentioned earlier. I think once that gets resolved, it'll sort of turn into another good for governance. But I think that's sort of the bad part of EOS right now that we're focused on fixing and have some interesting ideas in the pipeline to maybe help address.
100%. It's a good answer. I'm going to ask you this. I hate to do it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. The $1,000 EOS bet. I'm sure you get asked about this all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like back before it looked like EOS had some momentum, but as we discussed, EOS is so new. And I just think that it's better to focus on like development for, kind of the stable price and of course the utility itself. I don't necessarily think that EOS is going to be $1,000 tomorrow, but I honestly do see it happening in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, one of the biggest criticisms of that $1 million EOS bet, if you want to search that on YouTube, you'll find the video behind it. But I think the biggest criticism was the timeline. A lot of people saying, maybe in a couple of years as it gains adoption and there are, 100 million people using this, maybe then it can hit that, but the timeline is off. And, I happen to agree. I think it's just kind of a fun bet. It is denominated as 1,000 EOS. So either way, the person doesn't lose too much unless the price goes crazy high. But it's really been a fun bet that I think, has done way more good than harm, where, there are a lot of people that learned about EOS because of that bet video that came out on YouTube. There are a lot of people, whether they were in crypto or not, that are now a part of the EOS ecosystem because of that video. So I think overall it was very positive and something that, maybe we'll renew for the future and set the deadline, further out.
I love it, buddy. And it was one of the first videos that really stuck out to me. So in that sense, it was definitely effective.
Yeah.
I know you're always so busy, but do you ever get time to kind of like consume any media? Is there like an influencer that you follow, or is there like a favorite book that you have or something you might recommend to other people?
Yeah, I just finished the book. I don't know if I have it on my desk here. It's 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, who is, one of the most recent investors in Block One. And reading that book, it was pretty crazy because the things he's talking about when he founded PayPal, like trying to replace the US dollar with a digital currency and the way that, his investment thesis kind of works. A lot of that aligned with why he would invest in something like Block One and EOS. So it was a really fascinating read and can really be applied to crypto today. But beyond that, I do consume a huge amount of crypto-based media. So looking at people like Dallas Rushing on YouTube, there's some great EOS channels out there. Maple Leaf Capital on Twitter is a great, person that I follow on Twitter that puts out some really good in-depth sort of research threads. So, whether I'm reading a white paper one day or watching a panel with Dan Larimer and Joseph Lubin from Ethereum the next day, I'm always consuming something because I think it's important to consume other content that, so I'm always bringing in other viewpoints and challenging my own assumptions and opinions as well.
Yeah, I think that that's a healthy view, to be honest with you. I don't get a heck of a lot of time to consume as much as I would like to, but I think it's important to go outside your own scope and just kind of hear what people are saying and hear what people are thinking, because it only makes you more complete.
Definitely.
Favorite item under $100, Rob? What do you have? What's that number one thing that you love?
Favorite item under $100. That's tough. I mean, so much of the stuff that I do is digital. Maybe like a digital item that I bought in World of Warcraft, like one of the cool mounts that I bought for $21. That might be my favorite item. That's probably the only thing I can think of, other than maybe, if you're on a new MacBook and you film a lot, like the videos I film and you have an SD card, I have this little adapter that does SD card to my normal MacBook. But there are so few things that I use other than my laptop and my phone in my daily life that I don't know what I could pick other than something digital.
That's a really cool answer. It's also inherently reflective of your values. So I think that's really cool, man. I like it. Next question. If you could send an email to absolutely everybody in the world, what would it say?
Ooh, man, these are good questions. These are good. A lot of these interviews, I'm just answering them, rattling them off, but these are really making me think. If I could send an email to anyone, honestly, if it was going to everyone in the world, maybe just be kind. I think there are a lot of people that are just inherently sort of angry at everybody else or assume everybody else is out to get them. Be kind, maybe. And then beyond that, I might put a link to a video about EOS or something along those lines.
I like it. That's cool. I think I'd send something along the lines of everything's going to be okay. Because I think a lot of anger comes from just the unknown.
Definitely.
Sense of panic with the unknown. I'm going to just kind of give you a chance to do your plea. I know why people should vote for Cypherglass, but if somebody were to ask you who didn't know about Cypherglass, why should I vote for you guys? What would you say?
Yeah, so Cypherglass has consistently listened to what our supporters want. So whether it's putting up $100,000 of our own money, to fund the ledger support and the Trezor support that we're working on now, or whether it's, putting out tools like Glass that help block producers stay transparent on the chain, we're continually reinvesting basically all of the money we're making from block production back into the network to make a better EOS network. All of our partners at Cypherglass, if we wanted to, we probably would have been better off from a financial perspective to just, sit back, not even run a block producer, just kind of let EOS work itself out. But we're so committed to making EOS that main Dapp platform and really guiding EOS to the place that it needs to be, where, it's a network that's transparent. It's a network that has a truly free market. It's a network that is inclusive of all its participants. So we're really big on not only listening to the community, but driving out these core values to make the EOS network a better place for everyone involved. So I think that's why you should vote for Cypherglass. Also
your media too. Like I was saying, I'm a huge fan of your YouTube channel, your communications. You've always been really transparent and just very open and kind of engaging in conversations. So that's one of my favorite things about you, of course, is some of the media content that you guys present. I'm going to make sure that I link to absolutely everything in the comments below, but I wanted to give you kind of an opportunity for any final words for the community.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if you're curious about what you heard, you want to see more videos, search, Cypherglass on YouTube or follow me on Twitter at Finchify, Finchify. I frequently tweet a bunch of interesting things about EOS, new dApps that are coming out, new announcements, a little bit of speculation in there as well about what might be announced in the future. So come on over and shoot me a question if you ever have any questions about EOS, how it works, or whatever it may be.
I do follow you on Twitter, and I do enjoy your Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you, man. It's been great chatting with you, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm looking forward to you guys to kind of continuing to pave ahead and do some epic things within the community. And just thanks so much for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And we'll have to do another recap video, several months down the line and sort of see where we are then and compare it to now.
It would be an honor, buddy. You take care, and thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks.